Thank you for joining us. My name is Dustin Miller. I'm a lead technical education project manager with Max Technical Training, and I appreciate you spending some time with us this morning to understand the Ohio TechCred program. And our focus today is to help you reach a point where you're ready to apply, especially if this is your first time and you've not applied yet. And so we'll be covering a lot of material on the basics of the program and what it's going to take for you to be prepared to apply. Um, I also have Denise Bartik, the president of Max Technical Training, with us. She unfortunately is a little under the weather, so I'm going to do the majority of the talking today, and I will try and fill in as best as I can in her place. But she is with us, and Denise, did you want to say a quick hello to our audience?
Yeah, just I just want you all to know that unfortunately I have COVID, and but the good side is I'm here in Florida where it's only 68 degrees versus 18 degrees, I understand, in Cincinnati. The one thing that I do want to say is I'm glad you're at this webinar. TechCred, in the 30 years I've been in the business, TechCred is one of the best programs I have ever seen the state of Ohio implement. It's, yes, there's some red tape, but it's really easy to use. And I'm glad you're here and I'm excited to help you in any way through this program, whether you use Max or whether you use it for technology education, in manufacturing, or anything else, or even a competitor. It's a great program, and I'm excited that you're here, and Dustin will do a great job explaining things. After this webinar, if you have any questions, please email either of us, but I'll be here throughout the whole webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Denise. And along the way, if you do have any questions, do me a favor, throw it in the chat for me. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout our time this morning, and I will make sure to answer any questions that come along. Um, as Denise says, she's been in this business for 30 years. Max has been providing IT training for 26 years and everything from Microsoft products like Excel to classes in AI, data, programming, agile, and of course, our IT focused career boot camps. And we deliver classes as private to our clients or public open enrollment. And we've got over 400 classes listed on our website, and we deliver in any way from on-site or virtual. And today, like Denise has stated, this is a really exciting program because it supports the IT training ecosystem and is really focused on boosting the IT capabilities of Ohio residences and the businesses that rely on those individuals to move those businesses forward. And like it says here on our slide, no matter what industry you work in, it can be manufacturing or healthcare, technology is having an impact on the future of business. And TechCred is helping Ohioans learn new skills, and it helps employers build a stronger workforce with the skills needed in a technology infused economy. So today's agenda, first, we're going to cover what is TechCred. If you're new to the program, if you've never used the program, or maybe you just heard about the program for the first time, hopefully, through us at maybe one of the recent events here in Cincinnati. We're also going to talk about the TechCred success. We've got some numbers to share with you, and we'll be bringing on the Senior Manager of Corporate Training and Productivity Improvement for Mitsubishi, Jonathan Jones. He'll be joining us here in a little bit, and we'll hear directly from him on what their experience has been. And it's a very unique and incredible case study for the success of the TechCred program. We'll cover the eligibility and the process, and we'll also look at how to apply. We've brought some screenshots in of the actual application user interface from the TechCred website, and then make sure that there's plenty of time for Q&A. Hopefully you focus a lot of that Q&A on Jonathan Jones from Mitsubishi, because nobody's going to say it better than he does. And then we'll share some TechCred resources that are going to help you along the way and make sure that you're ready to apply. So let's talk about the basics of what TechCred is. This is our TechCred 101. And just to draw your attention real quick to the upper left-hand corner, that's really where this starts, is $180,000 per year is the total that any Ohio business can take advantage of in technical training. That $180,000 per year will take form in 6 program periods. Those program periods, as we are coming up on January, start from January and then rotate every other month. So you'll have 6 different periods in which the program period is going to open and accept applications. And that's really what we're going to cover today is that application process, how you select what courses you're going to take, what information is required. And in each of those open program periods, each Ohio employer can submit for up to $30,000 in IT training. And that can come in a variety of forms. I'm not going to try and math it out in my head, but if you also look, $2,000 per credential or class. And we're going to talk about in a little bit the difference between, or the similarities between, a credential and a class. But for each individual, for each class you submit for, that class's value, if it's at $2,000 or less, if approved, can be completely covered within that program period's, that application period. And that can be, again, up to $30,000. That can be your total that you apply for 6 times per year, which brings us back to that $180,000, which is, it's an incredible amount of money. And it can really make a difference in the upskilling, reskilling, and just the overall IT education for your workforce. To date, since 2019, the beginning of the TechCred program, they have delivered on over 100,000 credentials and more than $114 million in funding. Now, the shocking number that I've not put into this presentation, and I love to share this whenever I get to do this workshop, is there are close to estimated almost 2 million businesses in the state of Ohio. The numbers you're looking at right now are spread out across only 3,000. 3,000 Ohio businesses have found their way to this funding of $114 million in technical training. And I think that even more businesses can truly benefit from this program. And that's really why we're here today, is to spread the word. And like Denise said, we're not focused on whether you spend it with Max. Of course, that would be nice, but there are a lot of training providers and there's a lot of opportunity to find the right training that you need. And we just want to help educate people on how to use the program. So this is one of the most successful state programs supporting Ohio businesses to date. I'm going to go back to that once we have our guest. We'll go back to that slide once Jonathan Jones is able to join us, which should be in the next, within the next 10 minutes. So let's talk about what the basic process is to TechCred. So for any Ohio business that wants to apply for TechCred funding, you need to have an Ohio ID. Anybody can have an Ohio ID. I have an Ohio ID. But anybody can have an Ohio ID, but you need to, if you don't have it yet, create that Ohio ID. You're also going to need to go through the TechCred application process, which we will cover today. You know, Denise mentioned some red tape. I don't think I experienced TechCred in 2019 initially, and my experience today, as I've helped guide people through the application process, that red tape really comes in the form of just collecting the data and information that's going to help the state have a conversation about the sustainability and the success of the program. And so they're really just looking for some basic information. There are some time periods you have to wait for to receive your approval. But in terms of red tape, I would say it's pretty minimal. And I think you'll see that as we continue to go through this workshop today. Then you have to complete the training and receive the actual credential or course verification, validation that you've completed that training. And then you can move into the reimbursement phase. And this can take as long as you need it to for the reimbursement, and we'll go into some of those details. The courses that you select need to be completed within 12 months. So there is a window to it, but as soon as that course is completed, you can actually move into the reimbursement process. So these are really just the four basic steps: Ohio ID creation, submit your application, take the class, complete the credential, and then submit for your reimbursement. Now, what Ohio businesses are eligible to receive TechCred? The employer must have a physical Ohio address. They must be registered as a business within the state of Ohio and with the state of Ohio. The employees taking the training must be an Ohio resident, or let's say you're hiring someone from out of state and they're moving in. As long as during the reimbursement process, the individual has an Ohio address, when you submit for the reimbursement, you can get reimbursed. So that's a real positive if you're trying to influence skilled workers to come to Ohio. This also leaves that as a pretty significant possibility. And one thing to note, it is a employer upfront investment. So the employer pays for the course first, and of course, based on what I just covered in the last slide, it is a reimbursement. So you do have to spend the money up front, and then you will get reimbursed by the state. And we'll talk about some of those reimbursement requirements. I'm going to take a quick pause real quick because I would like to thank Jonathan Jones from Mitsubishi for joining us. And I'm pretty close to my original slide. So I'm going to reach out to Jonathan real quick. Jonathan is the Senior Manager for Corporate Training and Productivity Improvement with Mitsubishi. Jonathan, I know you just jumped on. You've had a busy day. Are you ready to join us?
Hey Dustin, I am having a problem with my audio. Give me about a minute to figure that out, and I'll let you know when I'm good. Sorry about that.
No, you're all good. Go ahead and just ping me on the chat and let me know, and I'll just keep moving on. And we can always go back. So let me go back to credential and course, because I think in the traditional sense of a IT or technology credential, it is, in my opinion, thought of as a series of days of class or weeks, and it leads to an exam, and you have to pass. And once you do, there's maybe a digital badge, or you can add an acronym to your email signature, and it sounds a little more involved than what TechCred actually is. So a credential is any class, individual class, could be Excel level 1, could be, like we said, AI. It's an individual class. It could be 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, but it must be industry recognized. It must be technology focused and short term. So short term goes back to what I refer to as, you've got 12 months to complete that course. This isn't for multi-year programs. This is really to build new and individual skills to employees. And as long as the credential meets this criteria, and right now on the TechCred website, which I may end up sharing my screen with that because there's a few interesting areas, there is a credential search. And so you're actually able to look at and view what credentials are available per the categories within TechCred. Like I mentioned, they have a healthcare, they have an IoT, they have a manufacturing, they have a business technology. And so these courses or credentials are organized by the state. And even if you don't see your credential in the list, or if you talk to myself or anyone on our team that knows TechCred, even if you don't see your credential on the list, there's actually an option during the application process that you have the ability to check a box and say, my credential is not on this list. And it will go to the state and they will review the curriculum and they will review the course. And you can add to the available courses or credentials that are approved by TechCred. We don't even have the ability to do that. All of the approved courses and credentials are driven by companies within the state. It's by request, and they all meet these criteria. And real quick to note, in the middle down below, you'll see we've got a Ohio symbol and it says Ohio TechCred. On our website, the courses that are approved by TechCred are marked with the Ohio TechCred emblem that you see here. So let's talk about the actual application. This is probably, if you've never applied before, this is likely the, I don't want to say scariest part, but you know, it's just like, oh my goodness, what is all the stuff I need to apply? So let's talk about some of these actually fairly easy items to obtain. So you're going to need a payee ID number. So as a company within the state of Ohio, in order to receive that reimbursement, they have to be able to pay you. And Jonathan, I'm gonna go ahead and jump to you after I run through this real quick. Um, you're also going to need your Ohio charter number and business detail report. The reason that I lumped those two together is, as you can see in the URL for the business detail report, that is a simple search that anybody can do at any time on any Ohio company. I could go search your company right now, and it's going to show a variety of articles that you can view and download. And the business detail report, in that report is your Ohio charter number, typically if you have the right document. So those two can be achieved really at the same time. So if you use that URL and you do a search for your business name, and typically it's one of the first articles in the list, you'll see that the Ohio charter number is on it. Now, real quick on the payee ID number, one of the things that we have learned is if you don't have the Ohio payee ID, it can take up to 10 days for the approval to come back and for you to receive that number. So let's say it's January. I don't recommend in the January program period that you submit for your payee ID on the 20th, because you may not make it before the end of the month. And then all Ohio businesses should have the federal tax ID or EIN. And these will all come into play very early on in the application process. You won't make it very far past really the first screen unless you have this information. It'll hold you up from even beginning the process. But this is not a ton of work to obtain this information. Other than the payee ID, I think it's really a matter of visiting the businesssearch.ohiosos.gov website and doing your search and making sure you know your EIN. I think the most taxing one of these is probably the payee ID number. But let me flip back real quick, because I like to start a lot of these presentations by understanding and learning from the experience of somebody else. We've been through the process of applying for a class, but as I mentioned before, Jonathan Jones, who is the Senior Manager of Corporate Training and Productivity Improvement at Mitsubishi, is really one of the best case studies, and he is so gracious with his time. And Jonathan, I appreciate you joining us. Good to see you. Denise is also here with us. But let's get started with why. Why did you start? Why did Mitsubishi start with TechCred? What was a lot of the driving purpose behind it?
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. Sorry for the audio issues to start, and thanks for having me today. I think the why was quite simple for us, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to even say it, but it may exist at other companies. Is we had significant organization, and we didn't have a budget to cover those needs. So luckily, I have a member of our group that's very active in local, state, and federal grant programs. And so he came about this, I think 2019, maybe. I can't remember the exact timing. But the real reason is we had needs to develop our associates, to upskill them, to reskill them, and we didn't have the budget to do it, especially on the technical side of the business. And so that was really the point where when that tech cred became available, we jumped on it right from the get-go, at least from when we first knew about it. But that was our main reason, is because we just didn't have the funds to support the needs for training in the organization.
How did you identify those needs? Like when you say we didn't have the budget, well, obviously you knew what you needed, you knew what people you had. How like what did you guys do as a team to understand what was needed, and even to know that you didn't have the budget? What kind of
So I think
conversations were there?
so I think there's always been, being in manufacturing, there's always a technical need. There wasn't really a requirement for us to go out and do a needs assessment on the technical side. When I say technical, I mean our engineers, our technicians. Our equipment is always evolving. We always have to keep up with the latest technology. So that has always been there, but we've always struggled with outside support and outside vendors because it is expensive to go outside for technical experience. But we had actually never done a needs assessment for our manufacturing group or our admin group. And what we found out was there was a technical need there. I mean, as simple as Microsoft Office, the applications that our entire business runs off of, and I think a lot of other companies are the same way. Most of our processes are connected to some Office 365 application, and we weren't providing anything to our associates. And so when we did that needs assessment and we stacked up all the requirements and all the cost, it was a pretty large amount. And when you go to accounting with that number, you're going to turn around without getting approval for that number. And so that led us to go, well, how can we still make this work? And coinciding with that is when the other John that works for me, through his channels, found out about the TechCred grant. So we had a needs assessment. We evaluated what it would cost to do that, and we had to find other means to deliver that to our organization.
It's really interesting, and I don't think I've ever asked this question, so I'll surprise you with one. As a company, as an organization, how does that make Mitsubishi feel about their relationship with the state when you see this gap and the state has this program to help fill that gap? Because companies are moving all the time. How does that make you feel about your relationship with the state?
That the state actually cares. And you hear about a lot of this, whether it's in the political scene or not, but this, especially the state of Ohio, is out to help, and there's resources available. So I think one of the first activities I supported 2 or 3 years ago, I talked with somebody and I was like, please keep this going, because our organization's starting to realize that the local and state government is out to help, right? There's a lot of cases where it's the other side. But in this case, and other cases, because TechCred is one grant, but we're active in other Ohio grant programs as well. So it really changed our mindset that they're actually out to help. They're actually out to help us develop our workforce. I know it's on the technical side, but we have a lot of technical needs here. So it's started to kind of switch that mindset a little bit about our relationship with the government.
And so what was the first time you guys applied? And I guess even kind of now that you've done it so many times, what's your experience been like with the application process and implementing, actually getting the reimbursements and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, scary at first. But I think I'll be honest with you, Dustin. Back when we did this, we didn't have you presenting the process, right? We were just kind of learning as we did. So it was scary. But once we got started, just as anything, we realized it's not as complicated as we had in our minds. And there's a lot more resources out there to support, whether it's seminars like this or it's lunch and learns or dinners or those kind of things where the state or other companies are showing the process and walking through how to do it. But we didn't necessarily have that, so we just learned on our own. And the benefit was so large, it's free money. So our perspective was with whatever time and resources you have to allocate to, do your prior slide, follow those 4 steps, get the information that's necessary, do the training, get all the information on the back end to get the reimbursement. It's worth every hour, every minute that you spend on it because we can now provide training to our organization that was not really available to us in the past.
And I think the most important question is number three here, because I like in my head as I hear, and real quick, can you share with our audience some of the numbers that you may have around your usage of the TechCred program?
So we have, I think, within the scope of TechCred, because we do have 3 locations, but TechCred is mainly for Ohio or for Ohio. We have about 500 associates that work at our location in Mason, Ohio, and we just crossed the $500,000 threshold for reimbursement. So I think we're probably at closer to $600,000 since 2019. And honestly, when we started out, I think our first year in 2019 was probably like $10,000 as we were learning, 10 or 15,000. So most of that 600,000 is in the last 3 years. And so we max out our request, every cycle, which is 6 times a year. We max it out every single time. And we've got people fighting over it, who wants, we have our IT department, our engineering department, our production departments that are now starting to kind of battle over the funds. But yeah, we max out every time and we use those funds almost, I won't say weekly, but at least once a month, we have some type of tech cred reimbursed training that we have going on at our facility. So
Well, I'm going to make sure to talk to the state that if you guys cross that $1 million mark, you need some kind of a plaque or one of those crystals you can put on a shelf or something that marks that milestone, because that's amazing that you guys are really taking advantage of the program. Um, and what's with all of that investment, my biggest curiosity is I just think of all of these individuals that can go home and talk about what they've learned, maybe with their families or talk to people about the classes that they're taking. And then they're like, yeah, my company's paying for it, or it's covered, or it doesn't cost me anything. That type of investment into your workforce, what has changed within the company culture now that those investments are being made and you're fully utilizing it to its full potential?
yeah, I mean, in simplistic terms, people are asking for training now. I mean, I think when I started here in 2017, again, I think we got active in TechCred 2019, but folks weren't even talking about it because I think over the time they had realized the company, I don't want to say it doesn't care, but wasn't making that investment in training. So now that they know it and kind of connected to your words of wisdom, you don't have to let them know it's a grant program. So they can have the perception that the company is making the investment because we are spending time. There's some administrative functions and processes that we have to do to guarantee that it gets reimbursed, but the employee doesn't necessarily see that. They see the company is making an investment in the development. And I think 2 weeks ago, our most recent example, we had a 10-person Yamaha robot training that was $11,000. It was 2 days and it was free. And when the engineers and technicians walk out of that class and they now know how to install, troubleshoot, program those robots, they're leaving with a skill set that they can apply that day or within that year. And so I think it's twofold. Number one is we get more interest in training because the company is offering it. And the second is, like you said, people can walk home knowing that I learned something today that's going to help me in my job that I didn't know yesterday. So the company is making that investment in me personally, which leads to that pride, I guess, and the willingness to come to work every day.
And so back to those words of wisdom real quick, and thank you for sharing again. This is, I think what you're saying is more powerful than anything I'm going to go through today. But the words of wisdom you've mentioned before, and I've actually stolen your words and your advice. And so I'm going to kind of lead you on this one. Um, you mentioned having the right, and I think you mentioned just a moment ago, the administrative part of it, that there are certain players and conversations that need to take place. There are certain people that need to lead this charge. There's a certain way that you found some success in how you streamline the way this works. So, in your words of wisdom, can you give some advice on, for the first time, people that are applying for TechCred, on how to put the right people in place to be successful in this process?
Yeah, my words of wisdom may be a little bit tough here, but I think if you can find somebody in your organization that can predict the value and has a sense of pride in what you're going to be able to offer, that's going to be somebody that's going to allow somebody to work through the issues and get started. Because John, who's in the group that covers this for us, he raised his hand. Well, once we started talking about it, he's like, I'll do this because I see the benefit of to the organization. I see the value to the organization of doing this. So I do think you need to have a point person that's responsible for the process beginning to end. And I mean setting up all the documentation for TechCred, doing all the communications for open periods, closing periods, due dates for submissions, doing the submissions to the website, getting the results back once they're approved or denied. Don't have many that are denied, but it does happen. Doing that communication and then getting the documentation on the back end to make sure that you can properly submit and get reimbursed for that. It is, I think, ultimately necessary to have one singular point of contact that has a desire and an interest in doing it. Is very, very important, and have that person engage with the leadership of the facility in whatever hierarchy that you're in, whether it's the plant manager or the individual managers of the department, to engage them and to explain the process and explain the benefits to the company. It's good to have that singular point of contact. And then I say this as well, go to accounting and make a friend in accounting, whether it's the CFO or it's the senior manager of accounting or whoever it is. Have that person find somebody in accounting and start figuring out where the costs are going to go, where the reimbursement's going to go, what is the process going to look like, because it's one thing to say, let's let the individual departments pay for to get reimbursed. But on the accounting side, that is a challenge. So we got with accounting and we picked an accounting code, and all the costs go to that accounting code and all the reimbursement goes to that accounting code. And it makes it much, much easier to track the ins and the outs. And we didn't realize that at first. We probably went a year without doing that. And then we realized the accounting piece of this is important just to make sure we can track how much are we actually, when I talk about $600,000, the reason why I can give that number is because we have one account that we're using where all the costs goes into and then all the reimbursement goes into, so we can see the total benefit, but we can also track if something goes wrong, right? If there's a negative in that account, we know that we missed a reimbursement or we need something missed in the paperwork, and we can easily resolve that. But yeah, one singular point of contact that controls the beginning to end and understands the process in detail. And it's going to take some time. They're going to have some, couple of hours here and there to do that, or upfront, maybe 10 or 15 hours to learn about the process. But once you get in the swing of it, it's maybe 1 or 2 hours a month that you have to spend on the process.
I'm going to invite any of our guests that have joined us today. This has been amazing information, Jonathan. And again, thank you for joining us. If anybody has a question for Jonathan, you can either pop it into the chat or you can unmute and decide to ask it yourself. I'll give us just a few moments, but Jonathan, you've had a major impact with what you just said on me and the way that I talk to companies about TechCred, because that administrative part of it, the accounting or HR or having a lead person, I don't think that that was a conversation I was as focused on until I heard from you and its value. And so that's made an impact on me. And so, again, if anybody has any questions for Jonathan, now's a great time to ask those. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. If you want to stay on for a little bit, I'll let you know if there are any questions come in. If you need to jump off, I, again, totally appreciate your time. You've been an excellent advocate for the program and a friend to Max for giving us your time. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. I'll stay on. I'll just may turn off the camera.
Sure. Well, I hope everybody really got something out of that. It is one of the best testimonies of the TechCred program that I've ever heard. So now I'm going to jump back over and I'll just do a quick review. When you apply, you're going to need your payee ID number, Ohio charter number, business detail report, and federal tax ID. Those are going to be required. Now, let's jump into what it looks like. I think that if you've never been into the application portal, and like Jonathan said, it's probably, if you've never done it, it's one of the scarier parts. So I'm going to give you some visuals that are going to help with that. And as we mentioned, what you're going to need to apply, this is exactly what it looks like. You're going to input your federal tax ID. You're going to do the drop-down menu on whether you're a government entity or not, provide the business name. And then if you have an office or department, you can, it can be as granular as that. And then are you verified and is the business name registered with the state of Ohio? This is how it starts. So you'll need that tax ID right away. Then you're going to need your Ohio charter number and payee ID. I want to draw attention real quick to the first part that says upload a copy of the Ohio Secretary of State's business detail report. That's the same URL, that's the URL I shared for how you search for your business. Now, what you will notice is that section is grayed out at the moment. What's going to happen, and having done this before, you're going to fill out all of the information on this first section. I'm showing you pieces of the same page, but you're going to fill out all the information, and then you're going to click Save. After you click Save, scroll back up, because this is a little higher on the page, and you're going to see that grayed out dotted box is now going to have a upload button that you can click and upload your file. So you'll want to have that file on your desktop or in a folder that you know where to get it. That's that business detail report that you would have downloaded from the website. And again, your Ohio charter number is in that business detail report, and then you're going to input your payee ID. After that, it's going to ask you a few questions about your business, some basic information, minority-owned, women-owned website. This should be something, and is probably the easiest part of what you're going to fill out. Then, I think like Jonathan said, this is where you're going to start aligning the communication with the state to whoever the main point of contact is inside of the business that's going to be leading this charge. So they're going to input their name, phone number, email, and is this the person that all approvals should come to, or questions about your application if they had one. This is, you want to try to maintain this as a central point of contact. Then it asks if you're a PEO. 99.9% of the time, I do not run into this, but recently I have one time that the business was a part of a PEO. And so it's going to ask you for additional information about that PEO. So you may need, if you are, you may need to go and grab that information before you start the process. Typically, and for a lot of first-time applicants, I actually offer the opportunity to schedule time virtually where you can share your screen and I will actually watch as you go through this part. And if I can help with any questions, or if we get to the part about selecting your credentials, searching those credentials on the TechCred website while you're filling this out, whatever I can do to help. That's why I want to make sure you have everything ahead of time. That way, as you start to get through the process, you don't have to stop or wait for further information. So if you look at this real quick, you'll see that now we are on tab 2, training plan. So there's the applicant information is tab 1, training plan is tab 2, submit application is tab 3. Here is when you're going to click on the red button, add credential. Now, this is probably the least enjoyable part of the entire process. A small box is going to open up, and it's going to allow for you to either do a search or scroll through a list of courses. I'll be straightforward with you. I don't love the search feature. I don't think it brings things in the right alignment, but it does okay. Most of the time, everybody is just scrolling through, looking at it alphabetically and finding what they're looking for. Now, when it comes to the course names, there's been some adjustments the state has made for the positive, but let's say you go to our website and you find the Excel Level 1 Foundations class, and I'll keep picking on that as an example. If that name exactly as an exact match is not in that list of credentials, it's typically because of one of two things. There is a credential grouping now. So there's exact match and there's broad match. And this is how I've had to teach people, and this has been really helpful, that there is an Excel, it'll be under Microsoft Excel, and it'll say all levels. So we may have 6 different varieties of Excel. You can, if the exact title match is in there, make that match. But when you apply, you can save yourself a little bit of time by just selecting the broad match, and you should not have any problems. That should not create any issues in the approval process. There's an Office 365 broad match. So any of it can be just a different variety or slice of Office 365 that may be unique to that training provider, but that exact title didn't go into the state. It can be covered under that Office 365 umbrella as a broad match, and you won't have any issue. If you can find the exact match, wonderful, but also keep an eye out for there might be a broad match. I spend more time helping people with this area in locating the right credential. And also, I mentioned earlier, when you hit add credential, in that window that opens, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, it has to go all the way to the bottom, there is a checkbox to apply for a new credential. So it may not be in that list, it may not fit the exact or broad match, but it does match what the state's requirements are for being accepted as a course or credential in the program for approval. You can check that box, submit for it, and then wait for the official approval to come in. And the next time, that credential will be added to their list. Now, let's look at what information they're going to need. So you're going to add credential, you're going to select the credential category, and then you're going to choose the credential itself. It's also going to ask you expenses per person. So if you look towards the bottom, the training cost per person is the cost of the course or any added materials. But like ours, Excel Level 1 Foundations is $350. You're going to punch in $350. You're going to provide Max Technical Training as the training provider. You're going to choose what type of training provider. It can be universities, community colleges, technical centers, private training providers, and you're going to select which one. And then total cost per person is really the same as training cost per person. And then the reimbursement amount requested. So if it's Excel level 1 foundations and it's 350, the total actual cost per person is 350, the reimbursement amount per person is 350, and in the right under employer contribution per person, if it is under $2,000, these things are going to do the math for you. These input boxes are going to do the math for you, and it's not going to put anything under employer contribution. If it's $2,500, which is $500 more than the $2,000 limit per credential, you would put in $2,500 as the total cost, $2,500 as the reimbursement, and under employee contribution, it is automatically going to put in $500. That is letting you know it is $500 more than the $2,000 limit. And not only are you going to have to pay up front, but you're only going to get reimbursed $2,000 on the $2,500. I can tell I said a lot right there. I'm going to pause for just a moment. If you have any questions about this part of the training plan, adding a credential, there's more slides to, reveal a little bit more of what's going to be coming. But if you have any questions, go ahead and drop it into the chat and I will go ahead and make sure that those get answered for you. Now, I think Jonathan said he had a class for 11 or 10 employees, 10 or 11 employees. So after you choose the credential and you put in the cost, you're then going to let them know how many incumbent employees will earn the credential or prospective employees will earn the credential and the total number of employees that will earn the credential. Now, I believe the total number of employees, the total reimbursement, and total employer contribution, similar to the reimbursement box we just saw before, they're grayed out because that math is automatically going to happen for you. It's not a box that you can actually click in. It's going to happen for you. And so you'll put the number of employees. At this point, you do not need to provide any employee identification information. This is just to get approval. That will come along later in the reimbursement process. Then, and let me tell you, all the way along the way, I recommend on each page you hit save. Just in case. It doesn't take a ton of time to fill this out, but just hit save. You're going to check mark the terms and conditions, program guidelines, liabilities, confidentiality, and then the reimbursement request. You're going to fill in the same person who just filled everything else out is going to put their name in there. And this is just kind of the, contractual part of it. And then I would hit save. And then just make sure that you're ready to hit submit. You can edit your application at any time prior to hitting submit. Once you hit submit, it's off to the state and you cannot make any further adjustments. So if the application period opens on Jan 1 and you fill this out on Jan 2 and you want to leave it sit there, maybe need to have additional conversations, or you're waiting to hear if another person's going to take a class, you can save it and it can wait and you can go in and make adjustments. But once you hit submit, it's official. So let's talk about reimbursement. Just like the application process, there's some data, there's some information the state is interested in or needs as a part of the process. Your reimbursement submission is going to require proof of credential completion. If you are working with an approved provider in the state of Ohio, they are familiar with TechCred. That proof of credential completion, they're going to understand how you are provided with that information. A certificate, whatever that may be, you're going to need proof of credential completion. Employment verification form completion. There is a form from the state of Ohio that you're going to fill out, and some of that information is down below on what they're going to be asking for. but you're going to have to fill out a form per employee that has taken a course. And that's going to be a part of your reimbursement submission. You're also going to need itemized invoices and proof of payment. So from the company that you received the training, you also need the proof of credential, an itemized invoice, and then you're actually going to have to provide visual evidence, bank statement, credit card statement, whatever it is to show proof that your company, paid for that class and that it matches up with all of the other information. And when you submit your employment verification of each employee, you're going to need to provide their name, last four of their social, date of birth, county of residence, and the most interesting one is the wage before and after credential. Now, I think we all know if I go and take Excel level 1, I'm not going to walk into my manager or boss's office and ask for a raise. That's it's going to take some more training, but the reason that they continue to ask for this information, I believe, is they're looking for the data to prove program success. And like Jonathan said, we don't want this program to go anywhere. Well, this is a part of that data collection. And real quick, BJ had asked a question, is the employment verification per employee and per credential or just employee? For an example, if an employee gets 2 credentials, does it have to be filled out twice? It should just be for, and I may have to ask Denise or Jonathan to jump in. I've not seen or been in as many reimbursements, but typically based on the form as I have seen it, it should just be for that reimbursement period and whatever courses they took. So one form, one employee, you will include all of the course and credential information. Denise, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think it's, excuse me, I think it's actually one form for each credential.
Okay, so you think it's
Yeah.
one form per credential.
Right. Jonathan, any thoughts on that?
That's what we do. Yeah, at
Okay,
the end of each class, each associate would fill in the TechCred form that's got certain information on it. We would collect those forms and use those for the submission. So I'm taking that to confirm what Denise was saying, that per credential, you need the verification form.
okay. So BJ, I'm corrected, and thank goodness I've got some more experience here on our call. I have not been a part of as many of the reimbursements, and so it sounds like whenever that employee is done, and I will note something interesting that I hadn't thought of before that one of my recent meetings had brought up around TechCred is the sensitivity around people's salary ranges and that type of personal information. I think, Jonathan, the way you just stated it was best. When that employee is done with the course, they should fill that form out. That was one of the questions somebody brought up to me about who fills that out. Is it HR? Is it, somebody in administration? And it does have the last four of their social, and it would have their salary on it. And so I think that's a really great way that Jonathan stated it, is that really having that employee fill out that form after they finish each course, and all of that documentation will become a part of your submission. So thank you guys for helping make sure that we correct that. So real quick, some of the most popular TechCred, because I know we've got about 6 minutes left, the most popular TechCred approved credentials that we are seeing: Office 365 Suite and Power Apps, Copilot, CompTIA, Azure, Machine Learning, Agile and Scrum, Data Analytics, Power BI, some AI courses, SAFe, ITIL. These are some of the more common courses that we're seeing right now. And if you ping that QR code, you can view all of our courses. And I've actually got some additional resources for you. after this, but real quick, and BJ, thanks for sending that question in. We can get a little more social with it if you would like to unmute and ask some questions. Ask Jonathan any questions. Now would be a great time to do that because I will throw you out those resources on my next slide and let you get out of here for the time. So anybody else with any questions, feel free to speak up. I see Justin, Michael, anyone. Um, BJ, have you submitted for, if you don't mind me asking, if you'd like to unmute, have you submitted for TechCred before?
I have not. We heard about it through one of the groups I'm a part of, the circuit. So this is kind of my first foray into this and very informational. I appreciate everything.
With what we've provided today, do you guys think that you'll maybe take a shot at January or March?
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your question. Here's a few resources for you. Somebody else just unmuted. Do you have another question?
Yeah, this is Jamie Dehoff.
Hi,
I'm
Jamie.
getting ready to submit for a reimbursement for the first time. And where would we find the employment verification form?
If you give me just a moment, let me see. Let me go ahead and here. I think I have it in here. So let me send a couple of things because I'm going to throw a link into the chat right now for everyone. There is a document from the state of Ohio, and I'm going to send it through right now, that details the program guidelines in full. And Jamie, I believe if you scroll to the bottom of that document, there is a link at the very, very bottom of it. And that should take you to the employment verification form.
Okay, thank you.
And also that document is also the third QR there on the right, the state TechCred document. That is the full program guidelines. You can click on the link in the chat. That employment verification form is at the bottom. We have a page dedicated to TechCred. It contains many of the courses that we highlight that TechCred has been used for. But if you do a course search for anything that you're looking for, like I said, we can always submit it as a new credential that needs to be approved or can be approved by the state. And then also, if you've never visited the Ohio TechCred page, you can ping that QR there in the middle. And that is where, especially during the application process, I help people match up. We want this course. Which credential for the state does that match up with? That's probably where I get more questions than anything else. All right. Does anybody else have any questions for us? For myself, for Jonathan, I'll try to handle them for Denise. Well, we finished right on time, it looks like. And if no one else has any questions, just to let everybody know, we plan on doing one of these workshops. This is our second one, really on the application process on every month that is not a program period. So if you get into a conversation and you're talking to a business, an individual you know from business, and you're talking about TechCred and they've never heard of it, we are going to be holding one of these on the non-program period. So our next one should be in February because we want to help as many people as possible understand how to utilize this program. And so I'd like to thank Jonathan Jones again from Mitsubishi for joining us and being so gracious with his time. Denise Bartik, who even under the weather has been able to be with us, and thank all of our guests for spending time with us this morning and learning a little bit about TechCred. It's been a lot of fun, and we love to do this. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and feel free to email myself. I'll throw my email one more time here down in the chat. It is dmiller@maxtrain.com. And especially if you've never applied before, like I said, let's go ahead and schedule time together virtually, and I can help guide you through the process or be there to answer any questions. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day and try to stay warm.